the workshop now. Hopefully, just see a few more people joining in, but obviously don't want to keep you too long on your Fridays. Hope everybody's having a great day. So welcome to everybody. I'd like to just say hello to a very special edition of the Meiro Cookie Workshop Series. My name is Neil Halliday, and I'm a director here at Meiro Customer Data Platform based in sunny Singapore. Today, I'm joined by data science extraordinaire Harish Rajendran from our excellent partner Ameex Technologies, who will be presenting a fantastic industry case study. And alongside him, we have the amazing Quinn Pham, who is our very own Director of Consulting and Client Solutions for everything ETL, business intelligence, MarTech, and CDP implementation. And just a quick overview for today's session. For today's session, we'll be breaking down the basics of what cookies actually are and how they're used, what changes are on the horizon, and what implications are to businesses and individuals. A fantastic case study, as I mentioned, from our great partners, Ameex Technologies. And then Quinn will be presenting on how Meiro can help to solve the problem effectively. Finally, we can spend some time chatting through any questions that remain if we haven't answered them on the way. And if I could please just ask everyone for 1 minute of your precious time at the end to fill out our survey at the end of the session, that would be fantastic. So, right into it. First off, the million-dollar question. Why are cookies so important right now? The web is constantly evolving, but these changes are now happening more rapidly than ever before, especially when it comes to consumer privacy and data. In response to the perceived lack of transparency and control for individuals, data breaches, as well as the creepiness factor in advertising, privacy legislations across the globe now give users control over their data. Effectively, these policies give users the ability to block various tracking technologies or request the deletion of their data, and tech companies have also responded by giving users control over how their data is used, both within browsers and in devices. Against a broadening backdrop of data protection frameworks, with issues in transparency and data ethics becoming a growing concern, we can see evidence of this in the media weekly these days regarding the misuse of personal data, alongside ever fluctuating laws and increasingly serious ramifications for offenders. A couple of examples from 2020 through to around about now in 2021, GDPR fines have risen by nearly 40%, and penalties under the GDPR have totaled close to $200 million. Data protection authorities recorded over 120,000 personal data breach notifications, which is 19% more than the previous 12-month period. In Singapore, by February 2022, fines are being introduced for up to $1 million or 10% of a company's annual gross income for personal data breach violators. So taking all of this into consideration, companies must strike a balance between respecting an individual's right to data privacy and the organization's use of data for legitimate business activities. So let's wind it back to the very beginning and ask, what actually are cookies? A computer cookie is more formally known as an HTTP cookie, a web cookie, an internet cookie, or a browser cookie. The name is a shorter version of magic cookie, which is a term for a packet of data that a computer receives and then sends back without changing or altering it. No matter what it's called, a computer cookie consists of information. When you visit a website, the website sends the cookie to your computer, and your computer stores it in a file located inside your web browser. Now, the purpose of the cookie is to help the website keep track of your visits and activity, and this isn't always a bad thing. For example, online retailers use cookies to keep track of the items in a user's shopping cart as they explore the site. Without cookies, your shopping cart would reset to zero every time you clicked a new link on the site, which would make it virtually impossible to buy anything online. Now, a website might also use cookies to keep a record of your most recent visit or to record your login information. And many people find this useful so that they can store passwords on commonly used sites, or simply so they know what they have visited or downloaded in the past. The actual mechanism of how it works is when you visit a site that uses cookies for the first time, the cookie is downloaded onto your computer. The next time you visit that site, your computer checks to see if it has a cookie that is relevant, that is, one containing the site name, and sends the information contained in that cookie back to the site. The site then knows that you have been there before, and in some cases, tailors what pops up on the screen to take account of that fact. For instance, it can be very helpful to vary content according to whether this is your first ever visit to a site or your 50th. Now, there are multiple different types of cookies, which we can categorize into three main groups: provenance, duration, and purpose. And now this is where it starts to get a little bit complicated. These three groups are further subdivided into many different types of cookies to keep track of different activities. First up, we have provenance cookies. Technically speaking, first and third-party cookies are the same type of files, and the term provenance refers to their place of origin. What's different is how they are created and used by websites. First-party cookies are created by the host domain, i.e. the domain the user is visiting. These types of cookies are generally considered good. They help provide a better user experience and keep the session open. This basically means the browser is able to remember key pieces of information, such as which items you add to shopping carts, your username and passwords, and language preferences. And third-party cookies are those created by domains other than the one that the user is visiting at the time, and are mainly used for tracking and online advertising purposes. They also allow website owners to provide certain services such as live chats. So for example, in addition to a first-party cookie being created by a host site called, let's say, somenewsite.com, a third-party cookie is also created by ad.doubleclick.net. The reason for a third-party cookie is because the URL of ad.doubleclick.net does not match the domain of somenewsite.com. The cookie is left by a third-party advertising provider, hence the name third-party cookie. Next up, we have duration cookies. And these are further split into two categories. You have session cookies and persistent cookies. Session cookies are temporary cookie files which are erased when you close your browser. When you restart your browser and go back to the site that created the cookie, the website will not recognize you. You will have to log back in if a login is required, or select your preferences themes again if the site uses these features. A new session cookie will be generated, which will store your browsing information and will be active until you leave the site and close your browser. Now, persistent cookies stay in one of your browser's subfolders until you delete them manually, or your browser deletes them based on the duration period contained within the persistent cookies file. And according to the e-privacy directive, they should not last longer than 12 months. However, in practice, they could remain on your device much longer if you do not take any action. Finally, we have purpose cookies, which are further subdivided into four categories. You have strictly necessary cookies, which are essential for a user to browse a website and use its features. A good example again of this are cookies allowing web shops to hold the items in the cart while the user is shopping online. These cookies will be first-party session cookies in general. Now, preference cookies or functionality cookies allow a website to remember the choices that a user has made, such as preferred language, region, or what is the username and password. Next up, we have statistics cookies or performance cookies. For example, visited or clicked pages. This information cannot be used to identify you. It is all aggregated and anonymized. The purpose of these cookies is to improve website functions. Performance cookies are also from third-party analytics services as long as the cookies are for the exclusive use of the owner of the website visited. And last up, we have marketing cookies or targeting cookies. These track users' online activity to help advertisers deliver more relevant ads or to limit how many times they have seen an ad. Targeting cookies can share that information with other organizations or advertisers. They are persistent cookies and almost always of third-party provenance. So all of this now, why the growing paranoia that is catalyzing all of these changes? And the answer, it probably depends on how you feel about organizations, both big business and government, storing information about you. There's nothing especially secret or exceptional about the information gathered by cookies, but you may just dislike the idea of your name being added to marketing lists or your information being used to target you for special offers. And that is your right, just as others are entitled to go along with the process. So when cookies first started to appear, there was lots of controversy. Some people regarded them as inherently sneaky, as your computer was being used without warning to store personal information about you, which could then be used to build a picture of your browsing habits. And all of this is what has led to various global legislations being introduced to provide transparency, options for consent, and increased privacy for web users. In order to comply with the new regulations, website owners were charged with telling visitors about the cookies they use and also obtaining their consent. And in practice, we see this every time we go on the internet. Websites that have complied now display a pop-up when you first visit that links to an explanation of their cookie policy and allows you to accept it. So, what is changing? Third-party cookies have been going through various phases of demise for some time, with Safari and Firefox blocking third-party cookie tracking. But when it comes to market share, Google's Chrome is currently the leader by some degrees of magnitude, and so its switchover is the big one. On June 24th this year, Google announced that they intend to delay by more than a year its self-imposed deadline to deprecate third-party cookies in its Chrome browser. The timeline was originally targeted for March 2022, but is now expected to be complete by 2023. There's a number of variables that have contributed to this delay, including a desire to allow sufficient time for public discussion on the right solutions, continued engagement with regulators, and for publishers in the advertising industry to migrate their services. However, what has undoubtedly pushed the timeline forward was Google's decision to work on a collection of adjustments to its privacy sandbox, including addressing the issues surrounding their proposed alternative for third-party cookies, which was known as the Federated Learning of Cohorts, or FLoC, which I will touch on in just a bit. So the removal of third-party cookies will make it vastly more difficult to track activities on the web and then serve personalized content. Now that most browsers are limiting third-party cookies, more and more organizations are trying to implement an identity resolution strategy and technology. However, there are still significant challenges to their success. Customer data is scattered throughout an organization, often residing in silos that hinder marketers' ability to develop and nurture relationships. A consumer might show up under different identifiers when researching something on one device, such as a desktop cookie or login name, calling on another via their mobile phone, and then buying something from you via their loyalty ID or credit card, for example. And now each of these identifiers can live in a different department and with different disparate collection and matching requirements. Now, losing data like this is no small blow. A recent marketers survey conducted by Furnesis Partners found that 80% of marketers reported being very reliant on third-party cookies, while fewer than half of those surveyed felt prepared for the upcoming changes. Okay, now for Google. And as we touched on there, this is the big one due to Chrome's vast market share. They will no longer enable individual level tracking and targeting. There will be no more behavioral targeting or profile building in its ad products. And they have also committed to not build alternative identifiers such as hashed emails. A couple of things, however, will remain the same. Google will still track and target users on mobile devices, and they will continue to allow advertisers to match their own customer data to Google's first-party data to target or measure campaigns. The catch being, as long as it resides within Google-owned inventory. So as I touched on earlier, Google's proposed solution for the deprecation of third-party cookies was known as the Federated Learning of Cohorts, or FLoC. And as I said, this was Google's alternative to third-party cookies and was based on machine learning. Now, FLoC is a type of web tracking that groups people into cohorts based on their browsing history for interest-based advertising. It was promising, but it was also very problematic. Earlier this year, The Economist reported that it may be hard for Google to stop the system from grouping people together by characteristics they wish to keep private, such as race or sexuality. The article also expressed privacy concerns, suggesting that cohort systems could facilitate fingerprinting of individual devices. Now, because of all of this, it all seemed to be up in the air currently, with Google backtracking and exploring a few other directions for FLoC, including moving from a cohort-based identifying system to a topic-based one. And this was where topic-centric IDs are associated with subject matters on websites that people visit, such as, say, performing arts or fitness, for example, as opposed to assigning in an opaque numerical cohort ID, which Google themselves found hard to express, and it was even harder for the general public to comprehend. Now, despite the apparent incomprehensibility, Flock's original cohort-based approach raised some clear red flags amongst privacy advocates for how they could be used to identify people, and those fears turned out to be fairly well-founded. For the other main browsers, it has been this way now for a while. In 2018, Apple launched restrictions in Safari browser with their Intelligent Tracking Prevention, ITP, blocking third-party cookies by default and limiting the lifespan of certain first-party cookies and data storage. And in 2019, Firefox also blocked third-party cookies by default. So to sum it all up, everyone agrees that third-party cookies aren't perfect, and moving past cookie-based marketing makes philosophical, ethical, and practical sense. However, this year-long reprieve enables companies to continue to develop their own solutions and to make up lost ground and lost time. According to StatCounter, 83.7% of the global internet traffic is already or will be affected by changes to third-party tracking. This means that the experience for users who leverage these browsers and for brands who advertise across these browsers will change. The experience will change to mean a greater shift towards opt-in or consent from users to be tracked. And the ramification for advertisers is that they will lose relevance at scale, especially when it comes to retargeting. After all, personalization, measurement, and general customer experience are getting harder and harder to execute effectively. And the pandemic accelerated people's desire for meaningful, relevant, and personal experiences without sacrificing privacy and protection. Google is simply giving us a temporary stay of execution, not a pardon. So finally, my last couple of slides before we dive into the Ameex case study, let's just take a moment to talk about the impact for marketers, which is going to be focused around three critical points: targeting, measurement, and attribution. In general, it will be harder to target audiences with granular precision. Third-party data, for example, in a DMP, used for precision targeting is less accurate due to its heavy reliance on third-party cookies. Reliance on walled gardens for individual targeting will increase, such as Google, because it will still allow customer matching on its owned properties. And it will be difficult to find new high-value audiences, as finding prospects that are more likely to convert using propensity-based modeling is no longer supported. For measurement, we will see inaccuracies in counts of unique views, which will be driven by losing the credible links between ad exposure to ad outcomes, ultimately resulting in complex performance measurements for ad campaigns across the media landscape. And finally, multi-touch attribution will be limited due to the reliance on third-party data. And this will lead many to move towards an ineffective last-click attribution strategy, where it's impossible to track the various stages of the all-important customer journey from initial interaction through to conversion. So just to wrap up this first phase on the grand history of cookies and the changes, Chrome will phase out support for third-party cookies by 2023. Google holds the dominant position in online advertising, and any changes to Chrome has a deep impact on organizations. Furthermore, as we spoke of previously, Google isn't the only major player altering the digital landscape. Apple has already made changes to restrict third-party cookies in the web browser, along with changes to mobile identifiers and email permissions. Right now, the data titans are making all the rules. Our advice: don't wait for Apple, Google, and Chrome to solve these challenges. The era of third-party cookies is coming to an end, but that doesn't mean that companies should abandon personalization. It's just time for a new, better approach, namely first-party data solutions, those that are built and owned by the brand. These are the foundation for navigating the new media landscape, and marketers should continue to invest in strategies that solve for the delayed deprecation of third-party cookies. So thank you for listening to me ramble on. Without any further ado, it's my great pleasure to introduce you to the first of our two technical experts for today, Harish Rajendran from our fantastic partner, Ameex Technologies. Harish, if you could please introduce yourself, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Neil. And your last 2 minutes were a good segue into what I'm going to present to the audience. So yeah, hey, I'm Harish Rajendran and I'm a data scientist. My primary focus is on marketing analytics and attribution. So to start with, maybe a one slider on Ameex, who we are. And we are an IT services company. We are a 600 member strong company. We started in 2007, mostly on custom application developments, and we grew with our clients. We developed our services based on our customer needs. So by 2010, we started building mobile applications and e-commerce. That's when the e-commerce is the starting stages. And then in 2012, we moved into analytics and user experiences. By 2017, we started venturing into AI and ML capabilities. We built chatbots, personalization, and marketing automations. In 2020, now every company is embarking their journey into digital transformation. They wanted to build data strategies. They wanted to collect more data. So that's when in 2020, we started doing this data strategies and CDP related services. So this is about Ameex. And in the next slide, I just wanted to start with a case study, which is more business centric. So as a business, you know that the third-party cookie deprecation is happening and a lot of changes are happening in privacy, data collections. So how, as a brand, you navigate all these changes. And in this case study, I wanted to maybe take the case of one of our largest CPG clients. And I wanted to take a baby formula nutrition brand. How did they navigate this journey? How did we start with them in 2019? How did it evolve and where they are now today? So if you see on the slide, by 2019, they're a traditional CPG company. So 80% of their budget, marketing budget, went towards display ads, search ads, and YouTube. So they are a Google marketing platforms shop, and 20% of their marketing spend went towards Facebook ads. So, and I also wanted to tell how the business looked at them, like what are the objectives of the business and what are the audiences they were using to target and how strong were their 1P sources. So if you see on the right side, the objectives. So as a CPG client, 60% of their marketing went towards brand awareness and 20% towards retail sales, because as a CPG company, most of your sales happen in retail stores. So very less happen on the e-commerce website. So 20% of their targeting were towards like go and buy Walmart, go and buy Costco, that kind of messaging. 10% of their marketing spend went towards website engagement. So come to our website and learn about our products, something like that. And 10% towards our D2C. So we have a website, you can come and buy your products. So if you really see, the mix is more towards brand awareness and retail sales. And in terms of audiences, 80% of their audiences were third-party and second-party audiences. So what do you mean by third-party audiences? Like you buy data from outside. So we know that we are product A and our competitors are product B and C. So we just wanted data from outside, third-party vendors who sell data, that purchases of brand B and purchases of brand C. So we wanted to lure them into buying our product. So we buy data from outside. So these are all third-party data. So how do you target them? It's completely based on third-party cookies. So you target them when they go to the open web using this third-party cookie, as Neil mentioned, the double-click cookie. And then 50% of the audiences were retargeting because they had a very minimal 1P strategy and very less traffic to the website, very less sales on their website. So their retargeting pool was very less, and 5% on 1P. So whatever data you collect are very minimal enrollments, and the mix of audiences were just only 5%. And by 2019, their 1P sources were mostly website enrollments. They had a very minimal website with good content, but they were not encouraging them to enroll. So it was very minimal enrollments and they had very minimal purchase. So if you really see, if on suddenly by 2020, if third-party cookie is deprecated, you know that 80% of their audience is non-targetable. And they have a DMP strategy too, because they are showing a lot of ads to different people. They wanted to restrict the frequency. They wanted to do suppression, audience management, because they don't want to bombard them with ads. So they were using Salesforce Crux DMP. And with all these 3P deprecation, the DMP is going to get complex. So in the next slide, I have also listed out what were the challenges in 2019. So as I said, 80% of the marketing budget were towards display ads. The traffic that is coming from display ads were not of good quality. They had more bounce rates. So it is starting to look like you are not reaching the right people. Maybe the cookies are not functioning well. So you are just spreading too thin and you are giving messages to different people. And with everybody using mobile, your thumbs are too fat. So sometimes you click on ads that you are not meant to, and it starts loading. So the traffic was becoming less quality, and cookie deprecation was real, and there was a lot of internal discussions on how we are going to manage 3P audiences, how we are going to manage all these 80% of display. And they also had a very minimal 1P. And we as a service provider, we definitely were in conversation with them how to develop their 1P strategy. And they wanted to just switch off the DMP soon. So maybe by 2020, they wanted to phase out the DMP, and they were not finding good value with DMP. And a retargeting is also going to be a key. So if you're going to retarget mostly relying on your third-party cookies, maybe you are not showing them the right message. So somebody has enrolled and you are again showing them as a new user, please come to our website. So he'll be getting the same message as a new user, but he has already enrolled in your website. So that's a waste of money. And also they had a very minimal sales in their website. So they are only 500K sales. So this is a US brand actually. So they had a very 500K sales, and it was 0.1% of their overall sales. So very less sales and very less data. So there was no value proposition for customers to come to their website. So why should
Harish? Hello? Is that Harish? I think he's just dropped off.
Seems that he has connection issue. Neil, would you connect with him and ask him if he can try another network?
Yeah, apologies for that, everyone. Just see if he's maybe just dropped off.
Of course, this has to happen, right? Statistically speaking, with the amount of webinars we are doing. So check in with him, and maybe if he's solving some issues, then I can go through our part first.
Yeah, what I'll do, I'll just hand over the presentation to you, Quinn, if you take it over, and then we can go back to the case study at the end.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so sorry everybody, it looks like Harry is having some connection problem. If that's okay with you, we'll just move to the remaining part, which is just a few slides, basically on laying out the solution with regards to creating your first-party data repository, and perhaps we can come back to Harris later on. All right, so let me just quickly share my screen. Okay, so you should be able to see my screen now on the solution, yes?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right, so everybody, so far, just a quick recap. What we have heard from Neil is in terms of all the changes that's coming to third-party data, basically, categorically called a cookie ban, right? But it's, of course, it goes a little bit more complicated than that, and it essentially refers to the fact that third-party cookies third party essentially who follows you through one website to the next, basically that's going to gradually be blocked out by most of the browsers, right? So most of the browsers are already blocking that. Coming in 2023 is when Google will finally, put the nail on the coffin. And so right now, what's happening is that the industry in general is really looking at how we can continue to work within the new framework of users' privacy being at the forefront of everyone's concern, but at the same time still retain our ability to actually target and look at relevant content for our users, right? So this is something that I talk to my clients a lot. And by the way, sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Queen. I'm the Director of Consulting and Client Services in Singapore for Meiro, who's based in Singapore. So we do a lot of implementation of the customer data platform for our clients, which is all over the world, from APAC, Europe, and now, very promising, which is coming in Middle East as well. So we see this kind of resurgence of the need for building sustainable solution for marketing and managing the customer interaction basically everywhere. And part of that is really in response to this third-party cookies changes. So let's look at technically what the solution is, right? How do we adapt for the future? So let's just start in a more general view, which is given that the ability to track precisely at the user level is going to reduce gradually. For brand in general, this has massive impact on the way that you do marketing, your marketing strategy, the way that you look at how we are actually adapting our strategy to two separate groups, to your current customers, right, and to your prospective ones. So with current customers, it's really about building loyalty by building a very customer-centric approach, and that requires understanding, integrating data from different sources. And this is where the customer data platform comes in to really unify the customer experience from different sources. So we get behavioral signal, not just from the website, but from every other channels that you are getting the customer behavior, like your customer care, your CRM, your mobile app. And that is the key to understanding the context around how your customers are interacting and making decisions, right? And with regards to building a pipeline for new customers, the prospecting dollars is gradually going to move into search. But as well, how do we move from a prospecting a potential customer to an actual and loyal customer is really by showing and by observing privacy-friendly practices, right? Because this is something that is demanded, not just preferred, but demanded by consumers these days. So where the consent is withdrawn, then there has to be a way to honor that across all of your channels and rely on contextual targeting. So based on not specific information about customers, for example, age and gender and what we know about them, but more around what they are doing on the website based on that time frame and what their intention likely is to be able to serve the kind of content that is personalized and that's relevant at that point of time. So that's in general the how we should rethink this strategy. Now, with third-party cookies, this was really easy because you have a tool that really track consumers around the website, different websites. And this is something that Neil has gone through with us, right? So the idea is that regardless of which site the consumer goes, so, typically, it could be you go to a news website and then a streaming website and then maybe an e-commerce site and do something. So all of those activities paint a very complete picture about who you are, what you like, what your concerns and preferences are. And with a third-party tracking, which is a domain that has nothing to do with this separate individual website, they were able to look at this ID. Now, earlier, when I mentioned that the browsers are going to block third-party cookies, maybe it's a little bit of a misnomer, right? It's not so much blocking as in the browsers are going to shorten the validity of these cookies, meaning that what's going to happen? in 2023, when Google is going to throw in the towel, is that third-party trackers, or third-party cookies are still going to be on the website. However, the expiry is going to be anywhere between 3 days to 7 days to 1 month, depending on the browser. So what that means is that there's a very short duration to track the consumer behavior across the sites. So, after you come back, let's say within 7 days, from the browser's perspective, you are becoming a new person, right? So it's no longer stitched to your old behavior, and therefore the insight of the consumer is going to be completely different. Now, with first-party cookie, then, the key difference is that this validity is going to be a lot longer. If you look at an example of, this is, by the way, Meiro's own website, right? So we, of course, track our own, use our own technology to use first-party cookie to engage with our consumers. So as we can see here with Chrome, which is Google's browser, Meiro user ID, which is a first-party cookie, has the validity of up to 2 years. This was done, I believe, in somewhere around March this year. So 2 years for Meiro cookies, as compared to Google's own cookie, Google Client ID, and some other third-party cookie, which is in general, a few days to a few months. With Safari, what we see is a little bit even stricter, because Safari is kind of going ahead with this in a very strict format. So we see that a lot of these Facebook's Pixel or third-party cookies here all have the expiry of just a few days to a couple of months out from the day that the cookie was set. And Meiro cookie, the first-party cookie in the bottom here, however, continues to have longer duration. So what this means is that with first-party cookies, you will have a longer duration of history of browsing of your consumers to be able to build understanding of what they do, right? Of course, with first-party cookies, we are not going to know what the consumers do before they come to our website. We are not going to know what they do after they leave our website. And we don't have any business knowing what they do, because that's their own privacy and we need to honor that, right? But what the consumers do on your own website is something that is of a valid and legit use case that you should start using first-party cookie for. Same thing with some other condition, right? So essentially how it is done is using our own SDK, which is essentially a tracker that is implemented on the website. This tracker will basically collect all the behavior of the consumer coming to the website. And what is important is that the events that is happening on the website is then sent to a server that the website owner is also the same, also owns the same domain where the server that's collecting the event is. So for all intents and purposes, we are a website owner, we are collecting the behavior of our consumers, of what they do on our own website, and we are also storing and protecting that data. So that is what it means by first-party cookies. Okay, and with all of that information, we also go through a process that's called identity resolution. So that's matching the consumer profile, not only from the website, but also from other sources like in-store offline purchases, like mobile app and CRM, for example, in order to build a single view of the consumer based on, if you notice, these are all the channels and data sources that a brand would own themselves and operate and protect. So there's no third-party data that we are buying or collecting from outside. So that has to form the foundation of your consumer repository. Okay, so with that repository, then we at the same time can continue to look at collecting all the third-party cookies that's associated with the same consumers. So imagine that for a duration of 2 years that I have the Meiro cookies, during that time, my consumers will already have been associated with hundreds of different Google client ID, which is Google cookies, because it expires shorter, right? So at the same time, the consistent profile, the consistent cookies from Meiro is gonna be able to keep this as a consistent profile and allow us to send the relevant IDs to any activation platform where you would need to be able to activate your consumer. So if we are sending to Google Ads, DV360, we are going to have the relevant Google client ID to send that audience. If we are going to send to Facebook, we are going to have the relevant ID, device ID or Google Pixel, sorry, Facebook Pixel to send to that audience. Same thing with the Trade Desk, for example, a programmatic tool. So regardless of where you are activating your audience and where you are building your audience, a first-party repository allows you to hold that foundation of first-party cookie that's going to be unchanged, and that gives you the single view of the consumer. And just very quickly through other solutions out there in the market, just for you to understand what your options are as well as marketers, right? So we have the Google's Privacy Sandbox, which Neil partially mentioned earlier. So that includes the federated learning of cohorts that Neil has explained, which is the ability to target and to serve ads, not based on individual consumers, but based on groups of people who are deemed to have similar interests, right? So the Privacy Sandbox is again a privacy standards that include Flock, as well as a few other APIs that does different things, for example, to send aggregated data to or conversion events to the advertisers, right? So all of that lumped together is a Privacy Sandbox. And what's noteworthy is that it's still very early, it's still in its infancy. Flock and perhaps the conversion API from Google is a little bit more, are the two components of the Privacy Sandbox that are a little bit more advanced and are more talked about, but the rest are still, they still have a long timeline to deliver that. And at the same time, interesting news is that this is basically Google's own standard. So it's not all of the browsers will need to comply. So essentially, of course, it's on Google Chrome, but not all browsers are required to comply. And what's interesting is that our team, a lot of us use the Brave browser, which is a privacy-focused browser, but built on the infrastructure of Chrome, right? And even Brave itself, a privacy browser that was built on Chrome, has declined to implement this solution out of the box, right? So that goes to see how much of the general industry is really aligned with this kind of solution that's coming. So that's just interesting to think about, right? So other solutions include sorry, just before that, of course, this solution, kudos to Google for trying to come up with a solution that does not target individual users on a person level. And on top of that, we have Unified ID, which you probably have heard the Trade Desk talk a lot about. So this is along the same paradigm of targeting individual consumers and just creating a new kind of IDs on it. So instead of third-party cookies, what if we hash the email, which is going to be unique for each consumer, and use that as an ID that is used for tracking. So it's working on the same paradigm, just a different methodology. So that's a different angle to approach that. And then finally, not finally, because there are a lot of other solutions, but the final one that we are going to talk about is SWAN, which stands for Secure Web Addressability Network, not so easy to remember. And it's another way to look at this privacy control altogether. This is more of, it's not a technology per se, but it's more of like a network and a common agreement. So imagine that you have a network of publishers and advertisers who agree to have the same framework, how users are going to give the consent for advertising and storing the data. So when a user such as yourself go to one of the websites that belongs to this network, and when you give certain consent or when you withdraw your consent, right? So this will be shared with the rest of the network, and everyone is forced to adopt the same thing. So that's kind of more of an agreement rather than a technology. So different approach to the same privacy conundrum. But if you think about it, for all of those approach, essentially as a marketer, as somebody who has users, who have people who come to our website, who has the need to provide a very privacy conscious solution to manage users' data, but at the same time provide a very customized and personalized experience for them, then the need for collecting first-party data is still going to be very important. So I'm aware of the time. So before I hand it back to to our case study, which hopefully Rash is back. Can you help me check, Neil? So
yeah,
before,
Harris is here.
so before I go back, just one last thing to kind of summarize, the key point in terms of first party and third party cookies is that third-party cookies are on the way out. It's going to be severely limited by the browsers. So definitely as a brand, we would need to start with your first-party data repository. And on top of that is the need to really integrate your customer data with a very resilient solution to build a single consumer view, aka us using the CDP in order to continue to provide a very personalized experience to your consumers. Okay, so I hope that was informative, and Harish, I'll hand it back to you to share the rest of the case study before we go to question. Okay.
Thanks,
Trust
Quinn.
me, guys, I do have the most advanced and the costliest plan of internet, but it still happens. So
If you just
so
2 secs, Harish, I'll just share.
yeah. Can we go to the next slide, Neil?
Yeah, there we go.
So yeah, so I was explaining about the challenges in 2019, where most of the spend was around third-party cookies and 3P data, and in 2020, Neil, can you hear me, Neil?
Yes, yep. Hear you okay?
Yeah, the screen looks just a little bit distorted. So yeah. So in 2020, obviously the realization has happened. Okay, the 3P cookie is going. So their budget composition has changed. So they have pushed 20% out of their display ads into the social ads. And they also came up with a D2C strategy where they wanted to build their shop with Shopify with advanced features. And we also helped them build a mobile app, because since it's a baby nutrition brand, moms are the main target. So we wanted to create a app where moms can directly go and access content. And they wanted to come up with a good SFMC strategy where they can build the email marketing and also a social influencer program. So I know with these walled gardens, it gets really difficult. So now we want to create our own influencer program where you can target the people, right? And just a second, let's just start it. So yeah, so the objectives, if you see really in 2020, it has totally changed. So now brand awareness is no longer the primary thing. So you wanted to emphasize more on website engagement. You wanted to improve your D2C sales, and they want more enrollments, and they also wanted to do content personalization. And also in terms of audiences, with all the 3P deprecations, they wanted to reduce the reliance on 3P audiences. So since we have started collecting 1P data, they wanted to do a good retargeting strategy around 1P. And since they're a Google marketing platform shop, they wanted to integrate all the channels and build those profiles. So by 2020, if you see the 1P sources that are already there, so they have started to build a good enrollment program in their websites, and they have built a good Shopify D2C setup where more sales are happening, and they have a social influencer program, and they have a mobile app for moms. So they have more avenues for 1P data. So next slide, Neil. And the challenges in 2020. So now you have built all these 1P data solutions, and you have a website, you have a D2C shop, you have an app, you have an email marketing, you have an influencer program. So what is the challenge? So when you have more channels, more teams come in. So there is a platform team which is managing web and mobile. There is a marketing team which is managing email and social influencer program. And there is a brand team which is managing ads. And you have also improved the sales. Okay, 3 million sales are happening where 500 cases were happening, but it is a separate database. Okay, sales are coming in, data is getting collected. So 1P audiences are now there in different platforms. There is an audience from mobile app. There is an audience from D2C Shopify. There is an audience from social influencer program. So the problem is, how do you orchestrate? How do you connect everyone? So that has become the challenge now. So 1P is no longer the challenge. You are getting rich data. And with also this Facebook and iOS update, your conversions are getting screwed up. So whatever campaign you do, whatever campaign you optimize based on conversions, everything is not working. The CPAs are not fine. So what is the solution? That's when, in the next slide, so that's when in 2021, the emphasis is towards precision marketing. So we are starting to collect data, and we wanted to stitch them together. We wanted to target the right people at the right time with right message. I know this is a jargon, but yeah, right message to the right people at right time. So the only way to do is unify everything, or bring data together, stitch a profile, stitch a segment, build user journeys. I know there are a lot of things that has to go in the backend strategy. You need to understand your customers well. You need to understand the brand well. So build user journeys, build customers. That's when we started experimenting CDP solutions. There are a lot of heavyweight CDPs and lightweight CDPs like Meiro also. So we also did we have started one POC with Meiro. And in the next slide, I would have explained on a high level what are the initiatives that we are doing with Meiro. So we are started doing some user segmentation based on different cross-channel interactions. And we also wanted to do a social integration on 1P targeting. And we wanted to build rich audiences. So now we know their behaviors. Now we know who is coming to the website, what they are looking at, and who has a mobile app, and who has a mobile app and then came to the website and did a purchase, and then who responded to emails. So we know we have all these data stitched together now. Now we are starting to see some success where, okay, when a mom comes in and when she's maybe she updates the delivery date, or she updates the birth date of the baby, we know where they are, we know what content they visited, we know if the baby has any problems based on the content they visited. So we started targeting them with good email and everything. So yeah, maybe Quinn would have definitely gone through the other content on how Meiro works. So I would stop here. Like,
I think it works quite well together with your presentation, how it fed into Quinn, but unfortunately we had a little bit of disruption. But I think hopefully everybody gets the gist of what we were trying to propose here and highlight. Yeah. Also,
trust me, Neil, US does not have the good internet. I think Singapore people are really blessed with good internet.
Well, man, thank you very much for joining us. I know it's late for you there. I'll just go to the last slide. And does anybody have any questions at all for Harish or Quinn before we just wrap up? Don't want to keep everybody too late on the Fridays. I know it's now we can get back to 5 people in Singapore. If you're here, people will be wanting to get down for a beer, perhaps. Any questions at all? No. Okay, well, look, thanks very much for taking the time to join us, Harish. It was a fantastic case study. Really clear points on the benefits and kind of the strategy that Ameex put in place for success for clients, bolstered by the sort of CDP capabilities. And thank you very much for Quinn for sharing her insights as well. Did somebody have a question there? Sorry. No.
Neil, I think there are some questions in the chat.
Okay, do you want to just take a minute and just address them just while I swap the screen to the last bit here?
I think there is a non-CDP question where Joey Tan has asked, is there any way to stitch data sources without a CDP. So stitching data is always possible, but the quality, or like how do you stitch the data? So obviously Google, when you have advanced licenses like Google marketing platforms, you are allowed to stitch data because you can export your website data, and you get a lot of data from your different platforms. But the granularity of stitching is what matters, right? So you're not going to stitch for the sake of stitching data. So CDP or the other data solutions, or maybe a plug and play kind of solutions where the heavy lifting is done by some vendors. Obviously, by CDP products, they have already done the heavy lifting of bringing in data together. But without a CDP, obviously, it is a little difficult with all these maybe developing situations. But if you are part of any Google marketing platform initiatives, or you have GA360 advanced level of data, advanced level of integrations, there is some level of stitching possible. But also if you have a Salesforce, Salesforce Marketing Cloud, or if you're a Salesforce shop, there is some level of stitching possible. But stitching everything together, media and user behavior, is getting complex. I think the CDP is catching up. CDP is catching up, and a lot of good innovations are happening there. So no, maybe with all these bans coming, there is no ideal solution yet. I know companies, a lot of companies are maybe in the race to find a solution. So Quinn, do you want to add anything there?
Thanks, Harish. That was a very comprehensive answer. I would just add one small little thing, which is that essentially, like you precisely said, CDP is the one comprehensive solution that essentially what a CDP is a combination of a few different capability, right? First of all, collecting data from all types of sources, behavioral, online, offline, different channels. Second part is clean and standardize and manage that data in a secure manner. And then third part is really to extract the right and relevant information, or IDs, or customer identifier. And then next one is to run the profile stitching algorithm, which essentially is identifying the common unique IDs and match that and unify that into a single customer view. Also taking into consideration edge cases where you have people, sharing devices and things like that. So it's a very robust algorithm. And then the outcome of that is you have single customer view. And then what do you do with that, right? Because the aim is not to have single customer view. The aim is to be able to work with that to have meaningful interaction based on person. So that is the job of a CDP. So of course, without the CDP, but if you have a very robust already data infrastructure to collect, to manage, to clean, to build that data, then it is somewhat possible. The benefit with I think using CDP is, number one, is with the experience of identity resolution is something that CDP vendors like ourselves we have seen across different industry and across different use cases. So we would really cover all of the edge cases and how an identity is built, right? For different industry, for some industry, a person is a person. For, let's say, if you have
Did we lose Quinn there?
Oh, I didn't know if it was my laptop, Quinn. I think mic has gone off.
What a day, what a Friday. It's like the universe is telling us that it's Friday.
Yeah.
That's it.
There is one more question from Venkatesh where he has asked whether the ban, how much will it affect cross-domain tracking? Venkatesh, I think if you own those channels, right? If you have two channels, two platforms, and if you own both the domains, it comes under the 1P tracking. I don't think it is going to affect the cross-domain traffic if you are having Google Analytics. So for example, in the CPG case where I said they had a content website, they are a shop website. Both are two different domains. It is shop.cpg something.com, and this is www.something.com. So there are two different domains. So I don't think that the ban will affect the cross-domain tracking. It can still happen. The only thing that is going to affect is the duration of those cookies or retargeting the users when they came to a website into the open web using 3P cookies. That's where the complexity is. But I believe cross-domain tracking should not be a problem. I hope I clarified.
Excellent. All right, everyone. Well, I know we're kind of at the sort of end here. Well, just thank you, everybody, for coming. Thanks so much, Harish. I know you had a bit of issues there with the connectivity and Quinn as well, and tried it as well. But, you know, let's just wrap it up, just to summarize basically what everybody is all kind of driving towards the same outcome here. You know, look at it this way, you know, first-party data belongs to the organization. It can be used to your own discretion, provided compliance is met. Those who are adopting a first-party data strategy simply render moot any changes made by big tech. And as Quinn touched on, the Meiro CDP connects all the identifiers that correlate with individual people. It unifies the digital and offline first-party data to inform the single customer view, and then manage the changes that ultimately occur over time. Coupled with this, having an identity resolution solution in place helps organizations generate a consistent, persistent 360-degree view of their customers and their relationships with them. So again, I think we'll all agree our advice is use this unexpected overtime to take control of your data destiny. Implementing a first-party data solution is a great starting point. Again, if you've yet to explore this path from end to end, expertise and resources are available from us in Ameex, and we're available for a free data maturity assessment at any time. If you can see the QR code, feel free to complete just a 1-minute survey. Also, the link in the chat would really help us to get some feedback on what you thought of today's session. In the meantime, move with a sense of urgency and establish or continue investing in first-party data strategies, such as Meiro, for managing identity across connected channels, and work on meaningful strategies to engage with your customers, to establish the trust required to obtain their consent. And just to wrap up, thank you everybody for your time. Thanks a million to Harish and Quinn for joining me today. And I hope you found this session valuable. Please do connect with us all on LinkedIn. If you want to learn anything else, drop us a DM, reach out if you want to find out anything else or any other questions we have yet to address. But thank you everybody for taking time out your Friday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.